The NFL draft is less than 3 weeks away, and I'm super excited for it to happen. I've been waiting for it for about a month now. But one thing that is going to be very different in this draft, and something that might happen that has never happened before, is we might see 5 quarterbacks go in the top 10 of the draft. It has never happened before. We've had 4, and that was a few years ago when Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, and Josh Rosen all went in the top 10. Some of those guys have worked out really well, like Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield. Others, not so much. So, in today's video, we'll be going over the 5 quarterbacks who have a shot to go in the top 10 of the draft this year and how I rank them, going over their pros, cons, and their stats. So, starting right off the bat, the quarterback who everyone knows is going to go first overall to the Jaguars. That would be Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence has been rocking the college football scene for the last 3 years, coming on as a freshman and winning the national championship. He's just been dominant ever since for the last 3 years, and there's been no debate as to who would be the first overall pick in his draft. Unless something crazy happened, he was going to be number one. And he helped himself out. In his 3 years at Clemson, he totaled all PFF grades over 90. Granted, his most recent year wasn't necessarily his best year statistically. He still put up good numbers, staying over 64.7% completion percentage. That's gone up. His yards took a dip from 2019 to 2020, going from 3,600 yards to 3,100 yards. He dropped in both touchdowns and interceptions, though, but he still kept up a good passer rating. So, Trevor Lawrence, his stats, they may not jump off the page this year, but looking at his play, he's done very well as a passer, and he's had very few flaws to his game. With how he played last year with a shortened schedule, he wasn't in every single game. As you can see on the right side of the bar, it showed every week he played. He missed week 1, week 4, week 9, 10, 11, 12. He missed a bunch of games, but he still balled out in most of the games he played. His worst game did come against Ohio State in the playoffs, in the semifinals, where he couldn't get it going against Ohio State's defense. They were able to shut him down, and I think part of why Trevor Lawrence's stats weren't amazing this year was they had no supporting cast for him. Travis Etienne was a good running back, but the wide receiver group wasn't necessarily the greatest in what he had been working with over the last few years. So that partially led to it, I feel like, but still, his play did clearly take a dip in this past year, though he got COVID, and we've seen with a whole bunch of other players in just the NFL how when they got COVID, it affected how they played. Just look at Cam Newton. He was terrible after he got COVID. Whether he was terrible because he got COVID or not is still for debate, but when players got COVID, they didn't do very well after. So the fact that Trevor Lawrence was still able to have some form of dominance in his game was still very good for him. Now, Trevor Lawrence has been regarded as one of the best quarterback prospects to come out since Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning, and John Elway. All 3 of those quarterbacks, funny enough, were all drafted by the Colts. This scenario is not going to happen here. Trevor Lawrence is not going to go to the Colts unless he sees like a Bo Callahan draft day type drop. Like I've said it in the live stream, go watch Draft Day, great movie. Not too realistic in how the draft goes, but still a great movie with Kevin Costner. But anyways, Trevor Lawrence, his biggest strength was his timing, and his biggest weakness was his accuracy. Trevor Lawrence was a master going from start to finish of a play. The only issue that he had was his accuracy, and it wasn't even that big of a deal. It was just throws here and there that would be off target, which partially what didn't help him this year was when he had his off target throws this year, his receivers couldn't help him as much as they had in the past because they weren't as talented as some of the receivers he's worked with before. So getting into more of his pros, his arm strength is amazing. He can throw it anywhere on the field, and though it may not be the most accurate, it is still going to get there for a receiver to get to. His able to recognize coverages and blitzes has helped dominate the college football scene in his entire career there. He's able to figure out where the defense is going to be, whether it's coming after him or dropping back. His pocket presence and manipulation are already at an NFL level, and he rarely takes sacks. So the way that he's able to shift the pocket, it's something that many quarterbacks in the NFL still have a hard time doing. And he is very sneakily running worthy. He's not talked about for having legs that often, but in the games that I've watched, I didn't watch any film on Trevor Lawrence because I've watched a few of his games over the past few years. Just knowing after he won the national championship 2-3 years ago, figured he was going to be a first overall pick at some point, so figured was probably a good idea to watch his games. And he was able to, when he escaped the pocket and ran, linebackers couldn't catch him. So it's a very good thing to have where he mostly plays in the pocket, but he can run if necessary. Some of his biggest cons are that he won't give up on plays and that he'll force throws outside of the pocket. So when he'll escape the pocket, like start scrambling to the side, he'll still throw it even if he shouldn't, and that mixes with his airmail tendency where he just kind of likes to chuck it deep and see what happens, kind of like what Josh Allen used to do when he first entered the NFL. But that is something that can be coached, as well as he very often got locked onto the first read, and the reason being for that was that he knew he had a talented receiving core, so he just knew they would go and make the plays, whether it was T. Higgins, Hunter Renfrow. All these guys, they'd go make the plays for him, and he didn't necessarily have to worry about them messing up the play for him. So Trevor Lawrence, clearly the best prospect to come out of the draft this year, and possibly one of the best in the past few years. Very few cons to him, and any cons that he does have can be coached. We just have to hope that he doesn't have any character issues, that he wants to come and play the game of football, and if he does, then he's going to be a great draft pick for the Jaguars at number 1. At number 2, I have quarterback Zach Wilson out of BYU. Zach Wilson came on as a massive jump this year in his play, and that led to him being cruised up draft boards all the way to many as the second best quarterback in the draft, which is also where I have him here. So looking at Zach Wilson's stats over the past few years, he didn't play all too much at BYU in his 2018 year, but he had 65% completion percentage, 12-3 touchdown interception ratio. His 2019 production dropped a bit as he wasn't very productive in terms of touchdown interceptions with an 11-9 ratio. His completion percentage dropped. His yards per attempt dropped. He didn't play all too well in the same amount of games. Then, in his career year this year, jumped all the way up to a 95.4 PFF grade in 12 games. Lit up the scene over at BYU, getting a 72.7% completion percentage, totaling almost 3,700 yards, 32 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions, lighting it up over at BYU. And that's one con that I have a problem for him, is that he did this at BYU, and because of that, he played no good teams. The two best teams that he played were Boise State and University of Central Florida. Those were the best teams that he played, lit them all up, dominated the scene this year. But he didn't play a single competitive game. He's never had to play a game where they could face someone of equal talent level, and that really messed with him, messed with being able to evaluate what he could do in the NFL. So looking at Zach Wilson, his biggest strength is his off-platform arm talent. His biggest weakness is that he's untested under pressure, like I was just mentioning. He hasn't been tested in the big lights. Trevor Lawrence has been under the big lights multiple times in just the college scene already. Zach Wilson has never done it. He's always been, this past year, didn't have a single game where he had to worry about how he played. The BYU just lit up all year round their opponents. But one thing that he did do very well, and he even showed it at the combine with that famous throw that he did, his off-platform arm talent. He's able to throw some beautiful balls without having his feet set while he's on the run. It's amazing the accuracy that he has while in the power in his throw when he's off balanced and just anything that's not his feet standing flat in the ground. Any of that, he's got crazy arm strength and gets it very accurate down the field. Some other pros of his is, like I said, his uncoachable off-platform arm talent. Doesn't need his feet set to deliver strikes. So, like we were just saying, he can just chuck the rock from any position of his body. He can pinpoint to every level of the field, ranked in the top 5 in off-target rate this season. He can get the ball, like I said with Trevor Lawrence, anywhere on the field. Arm strength is not a question with this guy. He's got a flick release, no wasted movement in his windup. He can get the ball out like nothing, and that's benefited him so much. He's got so much talent in his throws, and to get on top of that, he's a Houdini in the pocket, get himself out of tight quarters under pressure. So when he's trying to stay in the pocket and the pocket collapses, which was not very often, he could bounce outside, make his crazy throws, and get the job done. Some of his cons, though, is that he had all day behind one of the best offensive lines in the country, and when looking at the tape, some of the games were just glorified 7-on-7s. The BYU offensive line was able to shut out most defensive lines of opposing teams, which, with a 7-on-7, you don't really have the trenches, so you're just using receivers against the secondary. And that's what his games looked like. It was just figuring out which player was most open, getting it to them. He trusts his arm almost too much at times and won't set his feet on throws. So though he can throw the ball without being set, there are many instances that he could have gotten set and didn't, and it messed with his throws. So led to a little bit of inaccuracy issues, but he still did okay. And he has dealt with injuries, so it limited his production with only 1 year of high-level production at only a Group 5 only schedule. So again, he hasn't played top-level talent. He's dealt with injuries, but he has the tangibles to be there. He's been compared to Baker Mayfield, Patrick Mahomes. He's a big play guy who's either going to have the highest. I think he has a higher ceiling than Trevor Lawrence, but I also think he has one of the lowest floors of any quarterback in this draft. He could come in and be absolutely terrible, like worse than Josh Allen in his rookie year type of play. Granted, Josh Allen developed and became a very good quarterback, and that's what people are going to hope for Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson's most likely going to the Jets at 2. Do I think they would be able to develop him? I don't know, but we're going to find out, and I think Zach Wilson has a very good chance to be a successful quarterback in this league. Now, before I flip to the next quarterback, it's going to be debated, so just prepare for it, as I have Mac Jones being the number 3 quarterback in this draft. Now, before you say, what, he was at Alabama, number 1 team, top wide receivers in Devontae Smith, who was a Heisman winner, Jalen Waddle, Najee Harris, a top offensive line, Nick Saban. I watched the tape. Mac Jones is legit, and we're going to get into it. In his career, so came on to Alabama 2018, didn't really do much. 2019 came in when Tua got hurt, got 1,500 yards, 68.8 completion percentage, 14 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. Looked good when Tua got hurt. So when Tua went to the draft, they're like, well, are they going to stick with Mac Jones or are they going to go with someone else? They decided to stick with Mac Jones, and they are loving that decision as he rocked college football this past year. with a 76.6 completion percentage, 4,400 yards, almost 4,500, with 41 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, bringing Alabama to a national championship. And you could just see it in the game by game. He very rarely had a bad game. He only had 2 games where he had below an 80 PFF grade, and the Arkansas game was they just ran the ball the whole time. They didn't even ask Mac Jones to do all that much, especially because it was right before the conference championship game against Florida. So Mac Jones lit up every team he played in the SEC nonetheless, taking out teams like Texas A&M, Georgia, Auburn, LSU, Florida, even getting into the college football playoffs, trashed Notre Dame, and then was able to beat up on Ohio State, who beat Clemson the week before. So Mac Jones has been under the lights, he's been battle tested, and he's done very well as a quarterback. So his biggest pro is his underneath accuracy. He was the most accurate quarterback within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage this past year. But his biggest weakness was his easy situation, as we mentioned. He had the Heisman winner at wide receiver. He's got a future possible first-round pick running back in Najee Harris, another first-round wide receiver in Jalen Waddle, and Alabama has always had a good offensive line with a talented defense, all led by Nick Saban. So he was thrown in one of the easiest situations you could be thrown in for a player this year. But you can't let that diminish all the good plays that he did make. So getting into some more of the pros, again, operated one of the most dominant offenses in college football history. You can't have a top offense without a good quarterback. Most of these college football offenses in this past year that were very good, they had a top quarterback to lead them through it, whether it was Mac Jones, Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence. So, granted, it was one of the best offenses in college football history. So, though they had that much talent around it, you can't take away from the fact what Mac Jones did because he helped in that instance. He's got veteran understanding of an offense, and the timing of his throws are meticulous. He knows where he's going with the football, and he's pinpoint accurate with it. He knows exactly how he wants his stuff to go, reading what he wants done on the offense, making sure his receiver's in the right spot, reading his throws, and making the right one. And like we mentioned earlier, he doesn't miss underneath, the most accurate quarterback within the nation, within 10 yards. So that sounds like dink and dunk, but you can't dink and dunk without having a little bit of accuracy with it. And he was calm in the pocket under pressure, only 4 career throws while pressured on 131 pressured dropbacks. So some of that can be considered Alabama just having a good offensive line, but again, on 131 pressures, he only had 4 TWPs while he was going. So, leading into some of his cons, his arm strength isn't the greatest. He underthrew a number of deep balls, but got away with it because of his receivers. 600 more yards than anyone in the country to open receivers he threw. Like I said, offense made it easy. This offense was just stacked all around. He offers almost nothing outside as a runner. So what he does is he's a pure pocket passer. At his combine, he did try to show that he could do well outside of the pocket, which I think he did well in his first pro day. He didn't do necessarily well in his second pro day. And he had 1 year of elite play as a senior. But again, Trey Lance had 1 year of play, and nobody's coming after him for that. So we'll get into Trey Lance in a bit. At number 4, I have Justin Fields. Now, I might put Justin Fields over Mac Jones, and I've been debated as to why I don't think Justin Fields is going to do well in the NFL. It's not that I don't want him to do well in the NFL. I would love him to succeed. He might come to the Patriots, and I will very much root for him if he does. Granted, even though Mac Jones, I would want to go to the Patriots. But there's one thing that really sticks out to me with Justin Fields, and it doesn't even necessarily have to do with him. The last quarterback to be taken out of Ohio State was Dwayne Haskins 2 years ago. And we've all seen how that goes. He got kicked out of Washington in less than 2 years, and now he's riding the bench with the Steelers this year. The next few quarterbacks to come from Ohio State: Cardale Jones, Braxton Miller, Terrell Pryor, Troy Smith, and the list goes on and on and on. Ohio State has never produced an NFL All-Star at the quarterback position. Ever. And that's my issue. Is that as amazing as Ohio State has been in the last decade, they have never been able to put out a good quarterback in the NFL. And teams have tried and tried and tried taking from them, and it just doesn't work. So, again, I don't want Justin Fields to not do well in the NFL. Would love for him to succeed, especially if he came to the Patriots. I've said, whatever quarterback the Patriots draft in the first round this year, if they do, I'm getting a jersey of them. Doesn't matter who it is. But I don't think... I'm skeptical because he's coming from Ohio State. Almost any other college probably wouldn't, unless it's like Arkansas or Rutgers or something. But Ohio State has never produced a quarterback. So continuing on, in his career, he has done very well in his career. He lit it up in 2019 with 41 touchdowns to only 3 interceptions, almost 3,300 yards with 66.9 completion percentage. Lit it up in 2019. COVID happens in 2020. The Big Ten wasn't going to have a season. Justin Fields pushed for them to have a season. So they had one. And in his 8 games that he played, he had almost a 70% completion percentage with almost 2,100 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. Didn't do great in 2020. Clearly a step down from what he produced in 2019. But he still is very well talented. In his games in 2021, he did have some very bad games here and there. Indiana, Northwestern. But his best game of the year was against Clemson in the semifinals of the college football playoffs. You can't take that away from him. I watched that game. Justin Fields lit it up against that Clemson defense, made play after play after play, and Clemson just couldn't stop him. Granted, Alabama was able to stop him a week later, but Justin Fields has played in the big games and has done well in some and not that well in others. So, Justin Fields, his biggest strength is that he's one of the most accurate quarterbacks to come in the draft this year, but he doesn't do very well reading his offense. He sticks to one area and has a difficulty reading what to do play by play. So, sticking with the pros, he's done nothing but be a deadly accurate quarterback in college. As we've seen it with his completion percentage, he's on point with his throws, and a lot of times the balls isn't caught. It's more the receiver's fault. He's exceptional at protecting the football. Only 18 turnover-worthy plays. He's dynamic in the running game, can run over defensive backs and outrun linebackers. He's being pushed as a smaller Cam Newton, and you can see it in the way that he plays, consistently attacking downfield with his 69.9 completion percentage of passing yards came through the air. So, he doesn't dink and dunk, he throws the rock. But some of his cons, his play speed is a tick lower than what you'd liked. When in doubt, he holds the ball. So, he gets pressured. He doesn't know what to do in certain instances, and it leads to him holding on to the ball. Receivers did run wild in Ohio State's offense. So as much as people want to come after Mac Jones, they don't for Justin Fields, as Justin Fields had only 54 career tight window completions. So not very often that he had to throw within a tight window. So in his 22 games that he played over 2 years, he averaged only 2 to 3 a game. His blitz recognition was an issue in 2020. His time to throw increased versus the blitz. So he had a hard time. So as I've even knocked this against Cam Newton, so it's kind of ironic that they use them as a comparison. you have to be able to read the blitz, and even if you do read the blitz, make the adjustments. Justin Fields did not do that very well in Ohio State, and he's mobile, but his accuracy has suffered when on the move. And it's not like Zach Wilson, who can just contort his body and throw like Patrick Mahomes. Justin Fields wasn't accurate when he had to move on the run. He needs his feet set, and it clearly showed issues when throwing the ball. So Justin Fields, if he wasn't Ohio State, I might throw him ahead of Mac Jones here, but Ohio State has never produced a quarterback, and some of Justin Fields' cons are a bit of an issue, as he's accurate but hasn't had to throw to tight windows, and his blitz recognition was an issue, but that's something that can be coached, well, as long as his processing speed. At number 5, and my lowest ranked quarterback of the top 5 group, is a quarterback out of North Dakota State, Trey Lance. Trey Lance has done very well over at North Dakota State, but the only problem is that it's not a Division I school, and we've seen the issues with that. So this year, in 2019, he did very well with North Dakota State, getting a 66.7 completion percentage, throw for almost 2,800 yards with 9.7 yards per attempt. He had 28 touchdowns thrown to 0 interceptions, had a 90.7 PFF grade, looked great. COVID happens, they cancel the season. They ask for him to play one game, and he plays in that one game, has only a 50% completion percentage, threw for 149 yards for 2 touchdowns and an interception. Did not look well in that game at all. So his biggest strength is his physical tools, as they've always been. He's been compared to Josh Allen in almost every single way possible. He's got a monster arm that explodes to wherever he wants the ball to go, similar to Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson. He might have the best deep ball in this draft. He's built like a tight end and weapon in a short yardage area. He's even been compared to Taysom Hill in his build. He can bulldoze linebackers. He doesn't have very many bad decisions on tape, only 4 turnover-worthy plays in 2019 to no interceptions. Granted, that didn't look very good in his one game in 2020, but in his time of better tape and more games, very few turnover-worthy plays. So that's one pro he has over Josh Allen. He wants to attack the ball downfield, has an 11.5 yard average depth of target over his career. He wanted to throw the ball deep, and he got the ball where he needed to because he had his arm strength. Though he had the arm strength to do it, his biggest weakness was his accuracy. He had a hard time to find anticipatory throws and was hesitant to let it rip, as he knows he can run. So if granted he wanted to throw the ball deep, but what would happen is if all of his receivers were covered, he didn't throw to tight windows. And there was a noticeable dip in his throwing motion that was a big tell for defenses to be able to recognize when he was going to throw the ball. So even if he went for a pump fake, they knew it wasn't happening, as they could tell in his throwing motion when he was about to throw the ball. He was protected, as he averaged 18 pass attempts a game in 2019. And that was only, again, his 1 year as a starter. So he didn't even throw the ball for 20 passes a game on average. A lot of these quarterbacks who are going to be taken in the top 10 here have thrown for 20, 30, 40 passes a game. And some of the worst ball placement numbers among top quarterbacks, his accuracy is a massive issue for him. That's why he's been compared to Josh Allen and Taysom Hill for his build, his play, but he is very inaccurate. And if they can't fix that at the pro level, then he's not going to work. He's of all these 5 quarterbacks, he should be sitting for at least a year to develop. He should not be thrown into the game at all this year. And I think if they do, it's going to be detrimental to his production. So that's the top 5. Some of the other quarterbacks who might go in like the 2nd, 3rd round of the draft this year. Kyle Trask out of Florida. He's my top-ranked quarterback who might go in the 2nd, 3rd rounds. You've also got Davis Mills out of Stanford, Kellen Mond out of Texas A&M, and Jamie Newman out of Georgia. All quarterbacks who probably won't be pro all-stars in the NFL, but could lead to be fringe starter, career backup type careers if developed in a good system. So, main reason for doing this, I'm a big Patriots fan, as if you're new to this channel, if not, you've seen how big of a Pats fan I am. So, if I wanted a quarterback to come to New England, of the ones that would be most likely, I'd say Mac Jones is a perfect fit for the Patriots, as in PFF has compared him to Derek Carr. I think he's more like a Matt Ryan, Tom Brady type. His football IQ is off the charts. He's accurate in short throws, which is exactly what the Patriots would use. And he makes good decisions. He doesn't turn the ball over. Another thing that Bill Belichick would love. If I had to rank quarterbacks to come to the Pats, similar to this, I'd go Mac Jones, Justin Fields, Trey Lance. Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence going to be nowhere near the Pats. So who the Pats take is going to come down to who the 49ers take at number 3. And it's been debated who will be, whether it's Mac, Justin Fields, or Trey Lance. If you enjoy my content, I have done something very new for this channel. I started a Patreon. So being a super small channel, I get no money from doing this. And though I do enjoy doing this, it gets very difficult. I don't have a lot of time in my life, so when I do these videos, it's very, it's when I have free time. So I'd like, it's nice to get compensation for the hard work that you put into things. So if you could, go ahead and support me on Patreon. There will be a link in the description. Going over some of the tiers, there's the Grogan tier, which for $3 a month grants you Patreon-only updates, which will see, one problem I have is I'm not a social media guy, so, and I don't have enough followers to be able to do the community tab. So with this Patreon-only updates, you get updates on when videos will be posted, the schedule that I'll have for videos, as well as a Discord community that you'll be able to talk football in with followers of the channel here. Then you have the Bledsoe tier for $7 a month. With the Bledsoe tier, you get everything in the Grogan tier, but also I'll be doing extra videos on there. The series will be called Details of Football, going over some of the keys of just the game itself, going over different schemes, different, just anything that can help just a basic follower of the game better understand the game on a level that I have, as I've studied the game a lot over the past few years. And then there's the GOAT tier for $10 a month. You get everything in the Bledsoe and Grogan tiers, but you also have an opportunity, if you wanted, to be a guest on future projects, whether doing fan podcasts or being asked for questions in a live stream, anything of the sort. You get the opportunity to be a guest on this channel. So again, these are the 3 tiers. I'm not pressuring anybody to follow any of these. It would just be very beneficial to me if you were to join one. So again, I would greatly appreciate it. But again, understand if you can't. It's just something that would help benefit me and could also benefit you if you wanted. So again, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. It would be greatly appreciated, just like everything else you guys do. We've started to be very successful on here, getting a lot more views. It really helps a lot in trying to grow this channel. Again, thank you for watching. If you're interested in joining one of the tiers on Patreon, there will be a link in the description. So go ahead, check that out. We've got less than 3 weeks till draft day. I will be doing a live stream for both day 1 and day 2 of the drafts. So stay tuned for those. We'll be going over each pick made and just having lots of fun on the stream. So hope you guys can go join that. Have a great weekend. For those of you who have spring break at any point this April, whether it was last week, hope you had a good one this week. Hope you have a great April break. But again, thank you for watching. and let's hope that the Patriots take the right quarterback in the draft this year.